On Christmas morning, the Winters family living room glowed with soft golden lights. The scent of pine and cinnamon filling every corner, and snow lightly dusted the windows. Lily Winters sat quietly on the edge of the couch, her hands wrapped around a warm mug, trying to calm the flutter of nerves she didn't fully understand. Her parents were moving with unusual energy, their smiles wide but secretive. And there was a sense of anticipation in the air that made her skin prickle. She had expected presents, maybe a small surprise, but nothing prepared her for what happened next. Her mother handed Emily, her younger sister, a small golden house key. And her father's voice rang clear with pride. "You'll understand someday." The words hung in the air, light yet heavy, and Lily felt a sudden weight in her chest. She froze, staring at the key in Emily's hand, a perfect little thing that seemed to glow with meaning. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink, and every decoration, every flickering candle, every wrapped gift faded into the background. She couldn't comprehend it. Why Emily? Why now? Her mind raced through a lifetime of moments when she had been the responsible one, the achiever, the one who kept the family afloat, followed rules, worked hard, and sacrificed for everyone. And yet, here was her sister getting something Lily had always wanted. Recognition, independence, trust. A token that said, "You are ready for the world." Lily's hands tightened around her mug, warmth seeping into her palms. But it did nothing to calm the storm building inside her. She tried to smile, to clap along with her parents' excitement, but the words sounded hollow in her ears. Emily laughed, radiant and unaware of the tension blooming in Lily's chest, twirling the key between her fingers. That single gesture, so small and ordinary, felt like a betrayal, a spotlight that shone directly on the gap between them, exposing the silent rivalry that had always simmered beneath the surface. Lily's heart pounded, a mixture of disbelief and anger and something darker that she didn't want to name. She wanted to question her parents, to demand the reasoning behind their decision, to make them see how unfair it felt, but no words came. Instead, she watched Emily beam, her own emotions twisting into a complicated knot of envy, hurt, and something that resembled determination. The room around her seemed to hum with an invisible tension as Lily's mind raced. Every family memory she had played back in rapid succession. The moments her efforts were overlooked. The times she had followed every rule only to see Emily rewarded with charm and ease. The gatherings where Emily's laughter drew everyone's attention while her own accomplishments faded into background noise. She remembered nights when she had stayed up studying, working, caring for her parents, and times when Emily had been free to explore, to experiment, to enjoy life without consequence. And now this key, this small, unassuming symbol, represented everything Lily had felt denied, all the recognition she had silently yearned for. Now given to someone else with no effort, no struggle, no understanding of the price Lily had paid. The thought struck her like a blow. This was not just a gift, it was a declaration. Her parents believed Emily was ready to step into her own life. And Lily, for all her achievements, was still anchored to the past. Still invisible in ways she had never fully confronted. Yet beneath the anger and hurt, something more precise began to emerge, a spark that sharpened her focus. It was a quiet, burning desire not just to be noticed, but to set things right in a way that mattered. Lily realized that this feeling was more than jealousy. It was a call to action, a need to reclaim control over her own narrative. She would not act rashly, she told herself, but she would watch, she would wait, and she would consider every step carefully. The seed of a plan, subtle but undeniable, took root in her mind as the morning unfolded around her. She didn't yet know what form it would take, but she understood one thing with clarity. She had been wronged in her perception, and the imbalance demanded attention. While everyone else celebrated, Lily's mind moved quickly, calculating, observing, measuring, and for the first time, began to see her sister not just as family, but as a rival in a game she had been unwillingly invited to play. By the time the morning sunlight spilled through the frosted windows and the sound of laughter filled the house, Lily had made a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to turn this betrayal into her advantage, but carefully, deliberately, and without revealing the storm building beneath her calm exterior. That Christmas morning, what looked like a simple gift became the catalyst for a journey that would test her morals, her patience, and her willingness to confront the desire for revenge that had quietly awakened inside her. After that Christmas morning, Lily couldn't escape the feeling of imbalance that clung to her like a shadow. Everywhere she went, the image of Emily holding that golden house key followed her. A reminder of favoritism that her parents would never admit. Lily tried to focus on her own work, sketching architectural designs and meeting deadlines. But the ache of being overlooked and the stirrings of envy refused to fade. Each time she saw Emily's social media posts showing cozy corners of her new home or hosting small gatherings with friends, Lily's mind churned with a restless energy. It wasn't just jealousy, it was a need to understand why her parents had made this choice and a rising question of fairness that felt impossible to ignore. She remembered the late nights she had spent helping her parents with their finances, the careful attention to family obligations, the sacrifices made quietly so no one would notice. And yet, this key, this symbol of trust and independence, had gone to Emily, someone who seemed to glide through life with less effort and more charm. The thought gnawed at her, planting seeds of both frustration and resolve. In the days that followed, Lily's thoughts became sharper, more precise, almost like a blade being honed. She didn't want to act impulsively, but she couldn't ignore the pull of revenge simmering in her chest. She began analyzing Emily's habits, her social circles, the way she navigated her new independence. Lily realized that this wasn't a rivalry born of malice. It was about recognition, about control, about asserting her own value in a family that seemed to take it for granted. She mapped out scenarios in her mind, imagining conversations with her parents where she questioned the fairness of their decision, plotting subtle ways to challenge Emily's sense of superiority, and considering the satisfaction she would feel if the imbalance were corrected. Every plan was carefully considered, measured for impact, and weighed against her own moral compass. She knew that any action had consequences, but the desire to reclaim her position, to be acknowledged for her hard work and dedication, pushed her forward with a quiet intensity. As the winter weeks passed, Lily's internal conflict deepened. On one hand, she wanted to confront Emily directly, to challenge her in ways that would make the difference clear. But a part of her knew that doing so would reduce her to the very pettiness she despised. On the other hand, she felt the magnetic pull of opportunity, the thrill of plotting a strategy that could restore balance without exposing her own vulnerability. She spent hours at night replaying interactions from the past, examining every word, every slight, every moment when Emily had unintentionally overshadowed her. In her mind, these memories weren't just events, they were clues, puzzle pieces she could use to build a plan that would turn the tables. She realized that revenge didn't have to be dramatic or cruel. It could be subtle, intelligent, and precise, targeting the imbalance rather than the person. This clarity gave her a sense of control she had never felt before, a feeling that, despite the frustration and anger, she could channel her emotions into something productive and strategic. At the same time, Lily noticed a shift in herself. She was no longer just the hurt sister. She became an observer, analyzing motives and patterns, predicting behaviors and reactions. Every conversation with her parents was carefully dissected, every interaction with Emily logged in her memory. She noticed small inconsistencies in Emily's confidence, brief moments of hesitation or uncertainty. And she began to understand that her sister's success wasn't as effortless as it appeared. This realization tempered her envy with strategy, turning raw emotion into calculated observation. Lily's mind raced with possibilities, each one a potential step toward reclaiming her own sense of power and recognition. Despite the intensity of her planning, Lily never lost sight of herself. She continued to excel in her work, gaining subtle acknowledgments from clients and colleagues while keeping the storm inside hidden. The contrast between her composed exterior and the internal scheming made her feel alive in a way that fear or anger alone never could. Each small observation, each note of tension in her family's interactions sharpened her instincts and strengthened her resolve. She knew the moment would come when she would have to choose, act on her carefully laid plans, or walk away and claim victory in her own life without undermining anyone else. The anticipation of that decision created a tension that thrummed through her every action, a quiet pulse of suspense that made ordinary days feel charged with purpose. Lily had entered a world where every glance, every word, and every gesture held meaning. And she was determined to see it through, not with rashness, but with intelligence, patience, and the quiet fire of someone who had been wronged and refused to remain powerless. By the time the first snowfall coated the city in a blanket of white, Lily had transformed her anger into strategy, her envy into observation, and her hurt into silent determination. She understood that the game wasn't about punishing Emily or her parents. It was about reclaiming her own sense of self-worth, about asserting that she mattered, and about preparing for the moment when the scales could be balanced on her terms. The seed of revenge had taken root, but it was not yet a storm, which is careful, controlled force, ready to unfold at the right time, precise, deliberate, and unstoppable. The winter gala at the Winters estate arrived with all its glitter and expectation. A room filled with laughter, champagne clinks, and the soft hum of holiday music, but Lily felt none of the joy that surrounded her. She stood near the edge of the room, observing, calculating every detail of the evening etched into her mind. Emily floated through the crowd effortlessly, radiant in a silk dress, laughing with friends, her golden key tucked in her clutch like a secret trophy. Lily's chest tightened, the old ache of favoritism rising alongside a new, sharper desire to act, to claim some measure of justice for all the years she felt unseen. Yet, as she watched, she realized this wasn't a simple rivalry anymore. It was a test of control, of self-discipline, of whether she could channel her emotions without losing herself. Every movement Emily made, every smile, every subtle interaction became a puzzle piece, and Lily's mind raced to fit them together, imagining ways to challenge her sister without appearing obvious, ways to tilt the balance, ways to feel the satisfaction she craved without crossing a line. As the evening wore on, Lily's internal conflict grew. Part of her wanted to confront Emily, to point out the unfairness, to expose the subtle advantages her sister had always received. But another part of her hesitated. She remembered her careful planning, the nights spent observing, strategizing, and weighing every option, and she realized that rash action would ruin everything. She could see the weaknesses in Emily's confidence. Brief flashes of uncertainty when someone asked a question or complimented her accomplishments, and Lily imagined how small nudges or carefully timed words could shift perception in her favor. Yet with every scenario, another thought emerged. Revenge could satisfy in a fleeting moment but might leave lasting regret. She recognized the risk, the thin line between justice and bitterness, and the weight of the decision pressed on her. Like a stone in her chest, her mind raced, calculating possibilities, imagining outcomes, and assessing risks with a precision she hadn't felt before. The room itself seemed charged with tension, a reflection of her own internal storm. Conversations buzzed around her, champagne flowed freely, and laughter echoed against the high ceilings. But Lily felt detached, focused entirely on the game she had created in her mind. Her parents moved through the crowd, occasionally casting approving glances at Emily, reinforcing the sense of imbalance that had ignited her journey weeks ago. Lily caught a glimpse of her mother, a subtle smile that acknowledged her youngest daughter's independence, and felt the full weight of what this key had represented: trust, freedom, recognition. For a moment, the desire for revenge flared. Sharply, a bright and dangerous spark, and she imagined confronting her parents, exposing every slight, every unfair moment of her life. The thought thrilled her, yet she sensed instinctively that this was not the moment for overt action. The gala was a stage, and she was both observer and strategist, waiting for the right moment to strike her, deciding if she should strike at all. As the night progressed, Lily's focus shifted. She realized she was not merely competing with Emily. She was confronting herself, testing her own ability to balance desire and restraint, emotion and intellect. She noticed subtle patterns, the way Emily sought validation, the way certain guests responded more to charm than substance, and the fleeting moments where her sister's confidence wavered. Lily understood that true control wasn't about immediate payback, it was about patience, timing, and precision. Her revenge, if it came, would not be reckless, would be deliberate, calculated, and meaningful. She began to weigh not just the act itself, but the consequences, imagining the aftermath of every potential choice and the way it would shape her family, her relationship with Emily, and most importantly, herself. The climactic moment arrived almost silently. Emily laughed at a story someone told, leaning slightly toward a group of friends, radiant and carefree, and in that instant Lily saw the choice before her clearly. She could act, subtly undermining her sister, orchestrating a minor embarrassment, claiming a hollow victory that might satisfy for a moment. Or she could step back, walk away, and claim her own power in a way that no one else could take from her. Her chest tightened, a mix of desire, fear, and clarity. And for the first time, Lily felt fully in control of her own destiny. She lifted her glass, offered a quiet smile, and chose restraint. In that choice, she felt a rush of liberation, a sense of triumph that had nothing to do with Emily, nothing to do with her parents, and everything to do with herself. The gala continued around her, but Lily had already won in a way no one else could measure. And in that moment, she understood that the most potent form of revenge might be living with integrity, with control, and with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she would define her own life on her own terms. Weeks passed after the winter gala, and Lily Winters found herself in a quiet rhythm she hadn't expected. The storm of anger and envy that had consumed her for months had settled into a steady, controlled energy, one she could direct toward her own growth and ambitions. She returned to her architectural work with renewed focus, sketching bold new designs, taking on projects that challenged her in ways she had longed for, and discovering satisfaction in accomplishments that belonged entirely to her. The desire for revenge, once sharp and insistent, had softened into clarity. And Lily began to understand that the real power wasn't in hurting anyone else. It was in reclaiming her own life and asserting her value through action rather than resentment. She watched her sister Emily continuing to thrive in her new home, hosting friends, and enjoying independence, and Lily felt something she hadn't anticipated. Not satisfaction from seeing Emily falter, but a sense of peace from letting go of the bitterness that had once weighed her down. Each time she thought of the golden house key, she no longer saw it as a symbol of favoritism or injustice, but as a sign that her parents had trusted Emily with a responsibility that she, in her own way, had already been preparing for her entire life. Lily reflected on the months of planning and observation. Realizing how much she had learned about herself in the process, she had discovered patience, control, and the ability to channel intense emotions into constructive decisions. She remembered the moments she had imagined striking back, the mental games she had played to regain power. And she understood that acting on them would have brought only temporary satisfaction. The emotional clarity she now possessed felt like a reward greater than any symbolic gesture or revenge could provide. By choosing not to sabotage her sister, not to expose petty grievances, and not to confront her parents with accusations, Lily had preserved her dignity, her family relationships, and her own sense of morality. In the end, she realized that revenge might feel satisfying in imagination, but could never match the fulfillment of building something lasting. something that reflected her talents, intelligence, and careful planning. Her work flourished in ways she had never anticipated. Clients admired her creativity, colleagues respected her insight, and each completed project brought a quiet pride that felt far richer than any fleeting triumph over Emily or her parents. Lily also discovered that her perspective on family had shifted. She no longer viewed Emily as a rival or her parents as unfair judges of worth. Instead, she saw them as flawed, human, making choices based on what they believed was right, and she forgave not for their sake, but for her own peace of mind. Forgiveness didn't erase the sting of the past, but it released the grip of resentment, allowing her to move forward without carrying a burden that would have slowed her for years to come. She realized that revenge often ties people to the very pain they seek to address. But choosing her own path freed her to grow beyond it. Lily also noticed subtle changes in how she interacted with others. Her confidence was quiet but unmistakable, rooted in competence and self-awareness rather than competition or validation. She approached challenges with calm determination, assessed risks with a clear mind, and navigated relationships with empathy and insight. The lessons she had learned from the desire for revenge, patience, observation, strategic thinking now applied to all aspects of her life. She could anticipate reactions, manage conflicts, and make decisions that aligned with her values, not with impulsive emotion. The sense of liberation was profound. She no longer measured herself against her sister or anyone else, and yet she had never felt stronger, more in control, or more capable. One evening, as Lily sat at her drafting table, reviewing plans for her most ambitious project yet, she reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple house key on Christmas morning. That key had triggered a whirlwind of emotion, observation, and strategy, but the ultimate lesson had nothing to do with jealousy or revenge. It had been about recognizing her own worth, exercising patience, and understanding that true power comes from self-mastery rather than retaliation. She smiled to herself, a quiet, satisfied smile, knowing that she had emerged from the experience stronger, wiser, and ready to claim her own future on her own terms. The golden key, once a symbol of betrayal, had become a catalyst for transformation, teaching her that the most profound revenge is living well, succeeding with integrity, and refusing to let the actions of others define her happiness. And in that realization, Lily felt the deepest sense of victory, one that could never be taken away, one that would shape her life far more meaningfully than any moment of fleeting retaliation ever could.